You have been doing for the Live Coders team and all of the amazing folks that is currently part of this awesome group. I'm Michael Crump, and today I want to talk a little bit about Azure for .NET developers. But it's really more along the lines of it's really Azure for really any developers. Even though I'm going to be talking a little bit about things that maybe .NET devs may be a little bit more familiar with. Yeah, I have a Twitch channel, obviously. It's just mbcrump. Glad to have you come and hang out there on Tuesdays. I actually code a lot with my daughter and my son. And then on Fridays, we do kind of like live interviews. I've got some kind of cool guests coming up, like Jonathan Carter from the VS Code team. And so before I begin, I saw everybody had like these really cool kind of like hats on. So I decided that I was going to have to kind of bring out my one of my elite hats that came from a friend of mine that was visiting Europe. And shout out to Cliff Simpkins for hooking me up with this very cool cap. But I thought, in order to really kind of like one up everybody, that I was gonna have to kind of go back to kind of the glasses that I typically do, like in my Tuesday streams. Okay. With all of that being said, yes, so thank you for joining the session today. What I kind of wanted to do was I thought about how I use Azure and how I've been working with Azure. And before I even I joined Microsoft and I started working on this platform, how I started learning how to use this. And I thought that for people that's kind of brand new, if you're a beginner, you're new, you haven't maybe done a lot with Azure yet, maybe you've got some existing applications, then we could totally just kind of go through this and you could see exactly what I have been thinking. And also how I was able to kind of come where I was at. And so what we see here is that there's no fancy PowerPoint slides. This is 100% demo. That's usually makes some folks a little bit happy. And so I'm actually inside of the Azure portal. And so being in the portal here, I want to take a kind of a lap around a couple of different things. So first off, this is the dashboard. So you can think of these sort of like dashboards as an ability to take different resources that you have, and you can do things like you can add charts, you can do things like edit the existing dashboard. So you can make these dashboards kind of like your own, maybe drop a clock out there, maybe come down here, and again, we pull in Markdown, which is what I was using a little bit earlier. But all of the kind of the data here, you have the ability to customize it. Now, this dashboard isn't really that helpful because, well, I kind of did this to kind of be like, okay, this is kind of a cool thing. Instead of using PowerPoint, we're going to be, inside of the portal. But there are some other templates that I was going to, or other dashboards that I was going to show you that have a little bit more of that rich information that you would probably expect. So this is a project that I worked on a couple of years ago and still look around in there from time to time. And so this is kind of we're able to pull out things like our metrics explorers. This is pulling down different types of project templates. Project wizard types that we're using, exceptions. And so you can think of this, I built this complete dashboard simply based off of all of our existing app dev resources, app service resources. And so from here, before, I was already kind of playing around in here in full screen when I started this this presentation. But also you can see where there will actually be some other uses besides just a presentation of actually going in full screen. So one of the things that we do kind of around the office is that we have a window, we have our dashboards pinned, and you can put some of these around in some of your bigger, larger television sets. So the things that's important to you or to your business, you can actually just kind of walk by at the lunch break whenever we all go back to the office again. Or you can just set it to your computer, your laptop at home, in your pajamas, and be able to check it out from there. So I'm going to switch back to kind of the boring template for the moment. And I just wanted to show you a few other pieces. Is that we took a look over here at kind of like editing these things. But what you'll notice is that there's also this ability that you can kind of like share these dashboards. So if you have a dashboard you built, you want to share it with other people. Maybe they're not too into like building some of these things all the way from scratch. Well, you can share it out with them and they can take a look at it from there. You can also clone dashboards and so forth. And then if you come back up here, and this is like the resources. So you can do things like, such as you could search for like, let's just say Azure storage. Okay, so here is kind of like the different types of services that you can use. But then it's also like, here is some of the documentation. So I see a lot of people that think that maybe like this top part here is just strictly for like looking up for like different types of resources. But you can even type in things, you know, silly things sometimes, such as, you know, like where do I store data? And so it can give you some of those suggestions of what it thinks you could potentially use, potentially what you may be looking for, and so forth. Another kind of cool thing is I kind of take like kind of my tour around all of the cool things that's inside of the dashboard, is that there's also this button right here, and it is called Azure Cloud Shell. And so with Cloud Shell, you can think of Cloud Shell as like a browser-based like shell experience. So you use this to do things like manage and develop different types of Azure resources. And so if I go to this and we go ahead and we look at up here at the top, you'll see it has Bash, but there's also this option here for PowerShell. So depending if you coming a lot from the Windows world, PowerShell may be the thing that you may be interested in. Or obviously, Bash is what I'm currently already logged into. And so besides that, it says here, you know, type AZ to use the Azure CLI. So I could come in here and I could type AZ. And so you may be wondering, hey, what is this AZ thing? And so here inside of like AZ, this command line interface, this is basically a set of commands that you can use to create and to manage different types of resources. And you can see here, there's like things like, hey, there's like the managing like your Azure subscription information, going down into here like your backups, maybe your content delivery networks, and so forth. And you can use this CLI in a bunch of variety of different ways. I'm going to save that though, just simply because I'm going to show it to you in a bigger font. Unfortunately, I can't make the font any bigger on this current screen, but I want to make it a little bit easier. Another thing that I kind of thought that was just cool, I'll just go ahead and throw this one out here as well, is that not only can you like manage all of these, but if you're a Visual Studio developer or a .NET developer, you're probably familiar with that little thing called Code or Visual Studio Code. And one of the things that I always found, like, I don't know, I do this like probably every time I talk to somebody, and there's always like one person that's like, oh, I totally did not know that was in there. But you can like type in things like code period. This is just for the current folder that I'm working out of. And this is actually all of the files that's inside of my current session that I'm in. And yeah, so you can start working with those, unless, you know, you prefer to use like Nano. I don't know if people enjoy working with Nano, but I am not that big of a fan at the moment. And so one other things that you can do in here is that good old-fashioned command line palette. So the command line palette that you may have used or kind of get used to, you know, with like Visual Studio Code. It doesn't have everything, but it has quite a bit. And what this is, this really makes it a lot easier to start working with your Azure resources just completely in like a browser. And a couple of other things here is that if I wanted to come back up and let's see, let's go ahead and let's remove this shell. Let's see here. I'm going to click on this one again. And sometimes I do notice that it may act a little bit goofy, especially since I haven't warmed it up as often as I should. But I'm back here again. And I was talking about AZ. So there's also like AZ, and this is AZ account list. So like listing out like account information, all of that's available. And then there's other options. So like this is like in a table format. We could totally do it in a couple of other different ways. Like we could type in the same sort of thing. And oh, by the way, inside of the Cloud Shell, you get to go up and down as you like. So like output, table here. So this takes all of those resources, spits it out to a table. And then, yeah, you could do other kind of like fun things like, I don't know, do you want it in the YAML output? So there's many more like tab separated values and more. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and close that piece of it out, and we'll kind of continue our tour here. The other thing I wanted to at least show you inside of the portal was this piece that you can come in here and you can change some of these, some of the themes that you're currently working on. So there's the dark theme. I can use that and be all hacker-like, but I'm not, because I want you to be able to actually read what I'm typing today. So I'll switch back over to this theme I already currently had. And yeah, there are some different types of accessibility, as we have heard a bit about, that you can turn on here, and also different types of like contrast theming. And before I move on, I got to go ahead and pull out a little bit of the shortcuts. So everybody wants to use and work with shortcuts. Pretty easy to do that. Pretty easy to kind of get that up and going. Okay. So that's kind of the tour of at least kind of these first kind of like panels of what you kind of see if you're starting to like work with Azure. Now let's kind of look at more of the kind of the meat over here. So what you see here is a complete list of different types of services and products that you can use. So if you wanted to build maybe, for example, a web application, you'd probably start here. You can see there's maybe a few of these that I've got in here that's ready to go. But also not only can you see all of the different types of like resources, and you can find maybe some of the new ones that you haven't been using, but things that is important to you, you can easily like customize those. And so that's where like you'll see in here, especially in my favorites, I've already favorited a bunch of different items, so it's kind of like as easy as with just that star. And you can also do things like reorder these. So for example, the order that you see here that's the order that I'm actually working with Azure in my day-to-day job. And there's also, I want to just make sure you understand the concepts here of blades before we move too much forward. So after I click on app service, I could click like a conversation with, and then once I click on a conversation with, I can kind of see now I'm into like this overview blade, and I can kind of keep drilling down into these. So I can go to like tags, and like at this point, I could enter a tag into this. And you can think of it as your layer. So if you remove this one, okay, now we're back to app services. We can remove out of this one, and now we're all the way back to kind of the main screen here. And so I select dashboard for my kind of for the dashboard that I want to share. But there is also this concept of home. And when I was over here in settings just a second ago, I was able to see, hey, choose your default view, home or dashboard. And so this is one of the default options. I've changed mine, but this makes it a little bit easier if there's different things that you want to kind of check out, like the marketplace for like third-party extensions and images, for like virtual machines and stuff. Virtual machines are there. What have you recently worked with? I've worked with the live coders stuff. Yes, I think that would be about right. And yes, oh no, I totally did prepare today. See, that kind of like gives me away. Down into here, you can see a couple of other things like, if you want to get into your subscriptions, some of the different types of tools, and there is a Azure mobile application. Okay, so I feel that we probably have a little bit of insight, a little bit of knowledge around the current portal experience. Now, I kind of wanted to take a little bit more of a deeper look with the actual CLI. So what I have done here is I have went ahead and I've went over to this a URL on Docs, which I'll provide for you, and there's a couple of different versions here of the Azure CLI. So here, what we can do is we can go back over to Windows, install on Windows. There's like MSI installers. Let's say that maybe you want to use this or work with this in the Windows subsystem for Linux. Well, you can go here. And there's a couple of other resources that a couple of other SDKs and stuff that you can use there. So what I did was I am currently using and I am working with the Windows terminal. And so the Windows terminal, I'll just pull this up right here. The Windows terminal, it's in the Microsoft Store. So this isn't like something like kind of cool and secret. Well, it is cool, but it's nothing that's really secret. It's currently available for everyone to use and to check out. So here is that, and so you can go in here and you can download it. One of the other things that I think is really, really cool, so like a bonus tip, is that inside of the Microsoft Store, you can actually download stuff without signing in. So see, I'm not even signed in. Nice. Okay, awesome. So now that I'm inside of kind of like the Windows terminal, there's a couple of pieces here that I'd like to start with. So first, this is kind of like out of the box. I have installed Windows Subsystem for Linux. So that is the one piece that you haven't seen me install. That's also inside of the store as well. And so I get a couple of these like kind of drop down kind of like menus. So the first one here is going to be for our bash. And so, I'm just going to hit this AZ command here, and you can see over inside of this, when it finishes kind of spinning up, that this is the same Azure CLI as you just saw inside of the portal in Cloud Shell. But then I can come over here, I can go ahead and I can go Windows PowerShell. Okay, so here is PowerShell, and I'm hitting AZ because I've also installed it in PowerShell as well. And as we keep going down through this, let's go. We haven't done command yet, so we haven't done anything here with the command. So we'll just do an AZ there very quickly. So what we've seen so far is that we've got the Azure CLI installed in a couple of different locations, and that right now we're really taking advantage of the Windows terminal because we've got one application to kind of like look at versus if we came down here at the bottom, we typed in like command prompt, and we wanted to start having like multiple of those. So some of the kind of the benefits of using the Windows terminal, and especially with like Azure, is that when you're wanting to start to work with things like multiple tabs, like rich text, globalization, being able to configure it, theming, and styling is like super important as well. But then also one of the features that I like a lot is this one right here, and it is called the Azure Cloud Shell. So this is actually the same exact Cloud Shell that we just saw a little bit earlier. So I have went ahead and I have logged in, and so inside of this Cloud Shell, I can do something like ls-l, and you can see, hey, here is the couple of the things that we've got. We've got a cloud drive, we've got Go test, tips and tricks random file that I created at some point, and then Windows Azure PowerShell. And then over on back in our project that we were working on, when I clicked on this, just so you can kind of see, there's no kind of smoke and mirrors or anything like that. That same sort of command works here, and it also kind of like matches. It totally like matches up with that. And you can do all of the same commands we were running over here. You can do those just as well. But one of the things that I found was that having all of this access is like super great. So especially when you're inside of something like the Cloud Shell, because I have like some commands for like SSH. So like when I want to like SSH into like a Linux machine, I have that ability where I've already created a public key pair. And so that key pair already exists on inside of my Cloud Shell folder here. And so what I can do now is anytime that I'm authenticated or I spin up like an Azure Cloud Shell, it's fairly easy to, I can just run that same sort of command. We may take a look at that in just a little bit. Okay, cool. So one of the other things that it seemed like I struggled with, and I found other people that was just kind of like starting out, was trying to figure out a little bit more about the command line, because you will be using this. It's not like an elite type of thing. You will be using this 100%. So inside of Azure, you can do things. I just showed you AZ, but one little command that nobody uses, this is just kind of like a little secret between like all of us, is that there is this thing, and it's called AZ Interactive. Very few people utilize this. So in the past, I'm just going to go back over to this one. In the past, let's just say you want to do something like AZ, you want to do an account, you want to do list. Aren't you noticing that like I have to kind of keep typing like in all this stuff? And you're like, okay, well, if I wanted to figure that out, I'd first type in AZ, I'd come up here and I'd say, okay, okay, there's account. Would I do something like scroll back down? Would I go AZ, account, and okay, now it's telling me, okay, I'm missing some more stuff. Okay, which one of these do you want to do? Do you want to list it? There is an easier way to kind of pull this off. So coming back over here, I ran this AZ Interactive, and just as you would kind of expect, this is scoped to the AZ CLI. So I could do those same sort of commands that we were doing just a second ago. So I just typed in A, and hope this green, unfortunately I can't change the color, I hope that shows up, but if it doesn't, you can see there's like account, ACR, ACS, Active Directory, you've got Advisor, you got your Azure Kubernetes services, you've got a bunch of other things, and this is just the ones that start with A. So I know it's going to be account. Now that I know it's going to be account, I'm just like hitting the spacebar here. Now I can see, okay, well, cool. What are my options here? I can clear, I can list locations, I can set, I can do a few other things. Well, going back to, since we know what we're going to do, we're going to go list. Okay, so I can list all of the subscriptions rather than just the enabled ones. And you can continue going from there. And so at like this point, we're probably where we kind of want to be, and you can see it kind of like outputted that information there. Another thing that is helpful when I have been working a lot more with Azure from like the command prompts and stuff like that is a lot more of the options to be able to use like split panes. Now, split panes will allow you to just kind of like split up the screen. So I'm going to check to see if I can get this command to work. Let's see. There we go. Nice, I actually remembered it. So you actually set all of this up, but so you can see here, I've kind of got split panes here instead of like, again, going back to having, just one pane here. And yeah, I don't know, where does it end? Is it like the Matrix where we like keep on going or something there? But that's actually a really nice feature, especially when I'm waiting for like a VM to like finish installing, or I'm waiting for something to kind of like finish up, or waiting for that web app to be scaled up during that time. I find that very extremely helpful. And one other thing, I just got to mention it. And no, the PMs did not put me up to this. I'll just go quit here. I'm gonna go quit and so one of the other things I think that's really kind of nice here is that if you're already using Windows with Visual Studio and you're using like Windows Terminal, mouse support means a lot, at least to me. And so you can go into like some of these, or like I'm actually using my mouse to like double click, and then like this one, like F10. Well, I can use my mouse to actually exit out of those. So anyway, I think that's kind of a couple of cool little things that you're going to be working with, especially as you kind of get into Azure. Okay, to recap where we're at so far, we have taken a look at the Azure Portal. That is where all of your stuff is going to live at. We've also went ahead, all of your Azure resources is going to live at. We've then went ahead and we've taken a full complete look at a couple of the different ways that you can start to interact with the terminal. Now, usually normally people kind of figure out, okay, the portal, let me take a drive around it. Let's take a look at all of our, the tooling, because we're going to be using these for like automation scripts later on. And then it's like usually some part of like a virtual machine. And so I guess I'll be kind of like the old person here. And what I'll say is that, let me open up another window here. What I'll say is that, let me go here and let's just open up a brand new one. Is that there's been several times where I have had to create like a virtual machine. And when I had to create like a virtual machine, I did some things that I thought that's kind of like silly, and especially it's silly even in this like day or time. So let's think about this. So I want a Windows server box. I want another flavor of Visual Studio. Let's just say maybe I've got a community member, or maybe just another teammate has said, hey, I'm using Visual Studio Community or whatever, that I want to test like my application on. And what I would do in the past is that I would actually go over to something like VirtualBox. Does anybody remember VirtualBox? Okay, so I'm not looking at the chat right now, but hopefully one or two people says, yes, I know what you mean. And I used VirtualBox a lot, primarily because it was like free, versus like Parallels was charging, and there was a couple of other kind of like things there. So I would use VirtualBox. The next thing that I would do is that I would go and I would usually would always have like an MSDN subscription. So I would log in, I'd grab my Windows ISO image, Windows Server ISO image or whatever, and then from there I would probably go ahead and download the ISO of Visual Studio at that point. And I know now it's a little bit harder to do that, but you can. I think there's still good ways to build ISOs off of that, or maybe just the installer. I'd install VirtualBox, and I would create my machine with my operating system, and then with my Visual Studio. I would let that thing sit for a while, because you've got to I'd let it kind of update for a while, because it's going to take a while to get everything installed and everything. After I got it all installed, more updates and everything like that, and then I would kind of like begin to like work with it. And so I had a conversation with somebody, and they were like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I could use Azure for that, but it's going to cost money or whatever. And I kind of was like thinking, okay, well, but all the other time that you would spend putting all those things together, it's like this, it's pretty much like pennies. And also there's also some ways that you can kind of reduce that cost. So if I went ahead and I look over here, I'm in virtual machines, and I've made a couple of virtual machines to kind of make this a little bit easier today. I didn't want anybody to have to like watch me like install one of these or run one of these. What I did was I created just a new virtual machine. And you can see there's like things like, hey, here's the CPU average, here's the network. And by the way that you pin those onto that the dashboard, you can pin them just like this right here. There's like this little pin button. And you can also customize them from there. But what I did was, so I kind of created this one. But before I created this one of the things that I found that was fairly easy to do was that I could come in here and let's just say I go to virtual machines, create a virtual machine, and I am going to go down to, let's see, I'm going to go down to my subscription, and then I'm going to see here where it says browse all public and private images. And so from here, I could see, oh, there's a bunch of images right here that I could go ahead and use. What I'm going to do though is I'm just going to search for Visual Studio. Let's go Visual Studio here, because this is one of the things that I'm going to want. And I can see, okay, there's 2017. There is 2017 with Universal Windows tools. There's 2015. And yes, here's all like the latest and greatest of 2019. And by the way, these are just a few of the sample like images. But there is this one right up here, which is Visual Studio. Let's see. I'd probably take that one. So if I was wanting to like test one, so that is Visual Studio Community Edition, for this example, 2017 with Windows Server. Hey, you know what would be really fun to do? It'd be fun to go back into these private images and then just spin up a virtual machine with Windows ME. Wouldn't that just be like so much fun? Go back and live your glory days. Like put in like Microsoft front page. I think that'd be pretty cool. So over here, we can see there's a couple of different sizes that's in here. And so what I always would do is that I would say, okay, these may be like the recommended, but that doesn't mean that you actually have to like use one of these. So I wound up, selecting a size that was a lot cheaper than that. And that's one of the kind of the amazing things is that right here with this image, there's about 167 different types, and they also like show the different types of cost or things like that. So you can really pick one that's more along the lines of what you are interested in. Okay, so we have created a virtual machine. Let's pretend like that all just went well. Oh, and one more last key point is that people typically ask me, can you bring your own license or your own license key? So while you select a Windows Server 2016 or maybe just like a Windows 10 or Windows ME, well, I'm not sure about Windows ME, but for the others, you can, if you've already got a license key, you can use that license key. And if you forgot to put it in, always it will pop up the option where you can activate it a little bit later on. Okay, cool. So back over in our Live Coders VM here, now that has actually, it's what's so-called, it's spun up. And then now I can go over here to like connect, I can go RDP. Inside of the RDP here, you can see there's a couple of different options here. I'm just going to select good old-fashioned RDP. This is what I know, this is what I love, and also all of the tooling, everything's already inside of like Windows. I'm going to click on that, and it's asking me for a password. Well, you know what? I think I can give it a password. Let's go here, and let me paste in the password. Okay, and we're going to remember me, because I don't want to have to enter this ever again. Okay, cool. So here I am. This is actually, so if you work with Windows Server, okay, Server Manager. This is the thing that pops up whenever you boot up one of these, and then you can see, like, for example, this is a completely clean machine except for what I selected, and so this installs and pulls down all of the different all of the components that came with Visual Studio. So it's a complete like full install. You can go over here, I can hit help, and then I can like check on this, and I can say, okay, well, once this finishes, we'll see. Okay, great. We're in the community edition, so we have our environment completely set up, and it's honestly just a couple of different like clicks. But one of the things that also to kind of like tie back into like the automation piece is that while you have like this virtual machine that may be running, and say that you may have different types of scripts that you want to shut them down, you can do those sort of things and it will update this same information live. So if I were to come back in and we're going to go AZ interactive again, and what we will do is we will use the capability, and I'm just going to see how strong this thing is able to take care of us here. So we'll go AZ interactive again, and then from here, let's go ahead and let's do our, since we're scoped, we go via, we got our VM list. So we'll give this a second. So it did return a bunch of different VMs here. And so now if I wanted to actually stop the VM, I could do something like AZ VM. And again, I'm just like kind of spacing because it's auto-completing most of this already for me. Oops, let's do this. And so now it's saying, okay, well, I'm going to need like a name. Okay, great. Oh, cool. So there's two options here. So I've already forgotten the name. So that's just kind of me. So I'm going to go and I'm going to select this one. And let's go here, go to this one. And okay, now it was saying, hey, you left off another piece, which is the resource groups. So then I could come back here and go resource groups, and yeah, it's already completing that for me. And then, oh well, it's actually auto completed this last piece for me as well. So I can scroll down here, and I think it was the live coders group, and I can go enter. And now about to power off. So this VM, if I was able to like get to it, this VM is kind of now in that process of turning off. So that's just a kind of a quick look over there with that. And the same kind of applies over here with like Linux machines. So I run a Linux machine for a bunch of my other kind of like workloads. So I have a couple of .NET Core apps that's running in here. And so here, there's this thing like Connect. And so I'm usually primarily interested in like SSH. And so it gives you kind of the instructions to set it up, because it also, it looks for your private key, and then it's going to get authentication where it can completely go into your virtual machine. So if we look at, for example, let's just look at this one. I can go to SSH inside of our Cloud Shell in the browser, or we can come back over here. Let's go quit. And let's see, this is, oh, I'm not in Cloud Shell there. That's okay. I could have authenticated from there, but I've decided I'm not going to authenticate because this one is now set up. And so now I'm automatically logged inside of that Linux VM. And you can't go into the Linux VM without typing htop. You just can't. And so other things like here, I'm using Apache on this machine. I'm actually using it for a lot, so don't try to hack it. And so I could go here. I could do something like, cat index.html. I have like one little web app that I have running most of the time on this one. It's like this note-taking app. As you can kind of see, this is pulled from the index.html. And so I could actually go to that IP address. Again, don't hack me. I could go back over to this IP address. Let's go here. Let's go back over to our Linux, and I can hit return here. And I did not set up any SSL or anything. And oh, yeah, you won't be able to hack me, because this one was totally set up just for all of you to see how easy it is to kind of run and to work with this. Okay, I have set a time. I want to at least spend, I think I have maybe like 10 or so more minutes to talk about some of the other really cool stuff. So let's kind of shift gears and let's go and take one more look over here at the, actually I'm going to go back over here to the portal. So, and this is the last piece here. So inside of the portal, what I've noticed is that a ton of demos and things of that nature, they automatically start, I guess, cloud first. And well, obviously I love cloud native, cloud first, type of applications. They would maybe like, click in here, add, or they may go over here to the marketplace. Oops. And then inside of like the marketplace here, they may go and they may select a pre-built like web application. They kind of may be short from there. What I wanted to do is I wanted to start from an opposite angle and start from something that you've probably already built. And so here I've actually got in one of my comfortable spots is Visual Studio 2019, and inside of 2019, what I did was I went ahead and I created a new ASP.NET Core web application, and I used these example ASP.NET Razor pages. So yeah, so you can go file new project. There's so much like kind of like cool stuff as I'm kind of going into this. So you can see, actually, let me go back real quick, back one more time. And so inside of this, I did select this ASP.NET Core web application, but for those of you that may not be a .NET developer, what's kind of cool here is that you can also filter this down by languages that you use. Python, hey, it's there. More others are there. And then from also different platforms. So iOS, yes, I used to work quite a bit on iOS and Mac OS. And so you got Windows, Xbox, you can filter down those templates. If I go to the ASP.NET Core web application, what I did was I basically started like kind of walking through this dialog. And one of the things that I did was that I did choose on authentication individual user accounts. And what I was thinking about there was that I'm planning on using Entity Framework. And once I use Entity Framework, I was going to let it kind of scaffold an application for me, and so it would automatically build up that database. And so I did that. What I did was I went ahead and I built that application out, and I'm going to go to our recent projects, and I'll pull this one back up here again. And so this is the current project that I had. And so friends don't let friends like right click publish, but you know what? I don't think Donovan Brown's looking. So I'm going to kind of hide, but you can go in and you can actually publish the application. You can publish it like directly, push it right into like Azure. There's obviously with like this publish button, and you can do things when you're kind of like setting this up, like adding different like Azure App Service settings to attaching a snapshot debugging, and more. Now I've already deployed this application. If you want to know how like really cool this application is that I can come back over here and oh wow, that's awesome. Look at that. And I can go in, I can hit register, and I can create an account here. It puts everything local. It puts everything local to your local database. Okay, so that's great. Everybody knows I could like debug this from there. But one of the things that I found that's kind of neat is that I can go view. I can come over here to Cloud Explorer, and so this is all of my different services. So I can go in and I could go directly to that item in the portal, in the browser. I can also do this thing like attach debugger, and I gotta show this one. So if I attach the debugger here, what it is doing, it's finding a process to attach to. What you'll notice is that this isn't attaching to my local instance of this application, but instead it's actually attaching to the one that I have over here inside of the cloud. So that message is okay. It's going to go ahead and load our debug symbols at this point. And just to kind of drive the point home here, once that finishes, is that I could come into like pieces of my code, and if I wanted to, I could go to, let's see, we'll go to our layouts, and then I'd probably go over to index. Let's see, layouts panels, and let's see, shared layouts. Let's go to this one, and then I could come down here into like the render body for example. So I'm hitting this breakpoint here on render body, and then if our application is here and it's loaded, kind of one of the cool things that you see is that this is not actually running on my local host, but it's running inside of the cloud. And so when I just tried to reload that application, what's kind of nice is that if you're already a .NET developer, you can so-called like debug in production here. So this has stopped on the breakpoint that I set. Down at the bottom, even though it may be a bit hard to read, you can see there's a couple of things coming through like body content, buffer scope, component, context, and more. And what you can also do with this is that you can also easily wire these things up to a SQL Server database. And so right now, over in my, I think it was in my app, let's see, I think it's in that one. So right now inside of my my application, you can see it's going to my local DB. Well, I could change that fairly easy. And what I usually do is I will go ahead and I'll spin up a brand new SQL Server instance. And I could have actually, when I published it, but you know, you're not supposed to right click publish. When I published it, I could have actually created the SQL database at that same time. I created a database over here. This is the Live Coders database. And so what you're currently kind of like used to is like connect with, you could use Visual Studio right here, but it's primarily more along the lines of here's some of the connection strings. So once I've deployed that, since I'm using Entity Framework, it's going to build my tables automatically. So I select this text. I do have to change this out to the username and password, which it kind of it gives you those prompts there of the username and password that you entered. And then it's, and at least this is in ASP.NET, it's just as simple as coming back in here, changing that, and now that's actually pushing to production server. And so easy to verify this. So this is the login locally, and this is our login that we have that is automatically our production application over here in the Live Coders. And let's go back over to tables. I just want to just see it. Tables, expanding. Yes, users is where I want to go. And then I want to take that same sort of thing there because we could have created another one. But with that being said, I wanted to make sure that I stopped and at least give folks a tiny bit of time, if possible, to answer any type of like questions. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that all of the content that you see here, I am putting together back my repo again. So what I like to do is I like to kind of create this one time. And then if like you maybe find this useful, or maybe find like this is kind of a good kind of like overview, you can take that same presentation, you can take the resources. I've got like machine prep instructions and stuff like that, and you can present that as your own. You can be the hero, and I am glad to like kind of like give that to you. So in the best way to find me and like contact me, it's a little site that I've been working on since 2017, and it is Azure Tips and Tricks. So Azure Tips and Tricks has something that something for everybody, bite-sized information. So from here, I will go ahead and I will take some of the questions, if there are any. Let me go to this screen. Okay, excellent. I see them all now. So what if I already have a VM that's set up how I like? Do I need to script it all out to replicate it in my Azure environment? No, you do not have to script it all out. So if you've got one set up, is that one that's set up, well, first question, is that one set up like locally? Like, is it like on a physical like desk underneath your computer, like most of my VMs were of the past? Or is it already, if it's already deployed? And if it is already deployed, obviously, if like you go into here, let's see, waiting for my screen to update. And so if it is deployed, you can go over to your virtual machine, and under virtual machine, there is an option that you can template that out. And so you can create an ARM template, is what they call it. And so with an ARM template, you can take that exact same configuration that you currently have. So like virtual disk or disk, the sizes, everything infrastructure based. I don't know if that answers, but I hope it does. Anybody else have anything off the top of their mind to ask me? I would be more than glad to answer any type of information. If you don't, I can give you a couple of other kind of like quick things here for that. There's a couple of different places I like to take people over to. So things like you could go to docs.microsoft.com is usually one of the great places to go. Also, if you're just learning and you're just really kind of getting started, all you have to do is click one button, and this takes you over to the Microsoft Learn. So the Microsoft Learn is something that you can kind of jump into. You can learn different things on your own sort of like your own time. So there's like Azure Fundamentals. And so from here, you can kind of like walk through these and you can learn a lot of this information. And then, if you wanted to take some exams, you could take some exams, maybe help boost that resume a little bit and more. So there's at least a couple of things there that you can kind of check out. And also like even for like the videos, some of the videos that I do with like tips and tricks and stuff, all those range all kinds of different places. So right now there's about 104. I guess I should drop a few of these links in here. So that one, that link that I just dropped in there, that is for the videos. And then this link is for the docs. And then obviously for tips and tricks, it's over here. And yeah, I hope that helps. Let's see here. A question, mbcrump. Let's answer this last one. Do you feel the Microsoft documentation is enough to get started? Yes, I absolutely do, because that's actually how I got started, was by going through and like reading docs. Now, if you're really looking for getting started, there is another little project that I've been working on. So Developer's Guide to Azure. So this is an ebook that I co-write with another a gentleman. And so this is kind of the starting point. I would say this is one that could supplement it. So this is over here at the Developer's Guide to Azure. And so this is a PDF. And here is some insider information. That book is currently in process of being updated. And hey, if you stick around, for build, which build's going to be digital, probably may get access to a new version of the book. So it's going through a complete update at the moment. So hopefully that helps out there a bit. And then, yeah, and then finally, if you want to contact me, hit me up on there. And I believe I've been like way over. All right. Thanks and goodbye, everyone.